Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. For those of us here for the first time, welcome. For all of you who are return visitors, thank you for coming back. My name is Sesame Seeley. I'm the program coordinator for the bookstore at Busboys and Poets. And as always, we're glad to see you. Today, we have two fantastic guests discussing the very, very important topic of raising young boys, specifically raising young Black men. We have Marianne Howland here to discuss her new book. She's a proud mother and advocate for persons with disabilities. She's a founder of IBIS Communications, and she's worked very, very hard to put together her book Warrior Rising, which talks about the concept of the Black bat mitzvah, so the Black mitzvah, as something to help young boys have their own way of coming into themselves and being supported by other Black men. Joining her will be Dr. Ray Winbush. He is a research professor, and he also wrote a book on this very same topic called The Warrior Method. So they are good friends, and I will bring them on screen right now. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Hi. Good, thank you. Hi, everyone.
Okay.
Great. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Have a fantastic conversation.
Thank you.
Hey, Marianne, how you doing?
I'm good, Ray. How are you?
Well, I'm down in Atlanta visiting with my grands and my children. It's become like a little Winbush cluster down here.
Well, Atlanta is a great city to go visit. And, I'm in Nashville, so I'm not that far away. So when on your way home, you should drive over and pop in and say hello to my son, John Robert, who you met. You probably haven't seen him in at least a dozen years. He's a man now.
Yeah, probably a little more than that. We're going to be talking about him too. Should I call him Max or should I call him John Robert?
For the consideration of our audience, let's call him Max, because in the book, that's what his name is, and that is his professional career name. So okay. I have to train myself to call him Max as well.
Well, let's start. Both of us have written books about raising Black boys. And what was your motivation about doing that? Just curious.
Well, truth be told, Ray, I wasn't planning to write a book. What happened is I had just given my son a Black mitzvah. Mm-hmm. And I'll talk about the Black mitzvah in a minute.
Yeah.
But when I had gone to dinner with a very dear friend of mine, somebody who you may know, Jim Ed Norman, who was remember Jim Ed?
Sure.
And Jim Ed has known me, since before Max was born. So, and he's a miracle. And so all his birthdays are huge. And so Jim Ed knew to ask me, what did you do for John Robert's birthday? And when I told him that I had given him a Black mitzvah and then began describing it, midway through the meal, Jim Ed says to me, oh my God, Marianne, he's crying. And I'm like, what, what's going on? And he said, that is the most incredible thing that I've ever heard. It's amazing. And you know how Jim Ed has raised impeccable children. He's a very successful man. Says to me, for the first time in my life, I feel remiss as a father that I didn't do something like that for my own son, given all the incredible men that I've been exposed to. And then he said, when I'm in the business of producing, hit music and recognizing a good song, he said, your book is a song. You need to write your story. It needs to be told in a book. And so he compelled me. He called for the check, ended the meal, and then said, you have to promise me that you'll go start writing. And so I went home, and at that point, I started writing, but it really was just an article because it was really just about that celebration that we had just had. So I stopped. And then it wasn't until maybe 6 years later, after the men in his life had stepped in and all the lessons learned and the experiences that my son had as he grew up to become this incredible human being, was when I realized that's the book. The book is a story about what the impact that four incredible men had on a young man and his journey through his adolescence until, through graduation. And that was at the point where the book actually came to life. And so that was really the reason.
Yeah. So for those who haven't read the book yet, Max, Marianne's son, is disabled. And we want to talk about disability during this conversation as well. So why don't you talk about, and if you haven't read the book, you must read it. It's a must-read book. It's probably the most honest, blunt, descriptive discussion I've ever read about, parents of disabled children. So why don't you talk about, his birth? And I know this could be long right here, but I think it's very important for our audience to hear this.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah. Well, so when I gave birth to Max, I was only 26 weeks. And when he arrived, he was only 26 ounces. Mm-hmm. And as you can imagine, the trauma was, one, I didn't think that he was going to make it. I was surprised when I was rushed to the, the surgery room for them to even try to deliver a baby. And so he came into the world just, screaming, needy. Within the first 36 hours, he had a severe brain bleed where half of the blood in his body went to his head. And I remember the neonatologist came and said to me, look, we've had this crisis situation, and if he lives, he would likely be a vegetable. Yeah. And, that, what kind of, what do you do with that kind of information? So I just immediately went into the mode of, I'm going to do everything I possibly can to help him live, because he came in this world to live. Babies are born to live. And he spent 83 days in NICU. And in that time had, he had several surgeries that included, he was born with retinopathy of prematurity, which is the same disease that Stevie Wonder had that rendered him blind. But my son was able to have a corrective eye surgery to restore his vision. And then he had a bilateral hernia, so he had to have bilateral hernia surgery. Then because of the brain bleed, he also had was susceptible to hydrocephalus because of the blockage of the blood. So he had to have a shunt put in within the first 2 months. So there was a lot of intervention and a lot of stress, anxiety. And those first 3 months are a blur because I spent more time, sleeping, in NICU by his little incubator. He was so early that, if you can imagine this, he was about the size of my hand and his skin was like cellophane. Yeah. So they had to tape it inside of his arms and the back of his legs so it wouldn't tear, because if it did, he would die. And you could see his heart beating in his chest like a fist under a sheet. He was so unfinished. So inside the incubator, I got to watch him kind of become a human, and by the time he came home after 83 days, he was 4 pounds, 7 ounces and cherubic because of all the steroids that they were giving him to help him gain weight. And I tell you what, he just had fight in him from day one. And, always was a happy baby, so it seemed as though he just made a statement that he was ready to come. He was ready to be born early. He's ready to take on life, come hell or high water. And so we have been on a journey in his lifetime it's been a journey of overcoming. And so, as he got to grow older, there were more complications, but we just always worked on maximizing every kind of therapy and every kind of medical aid assistance that we could get to allow him to become the incredible man that he is today. And, he's so vivacious and vibrant and off the charts. He could be president at this point. So, but he does have cerebral palsy, and he does have ADHD on an extreme level. But you know what? That's all really manageable. So I'm lucky to be his mom.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story, and I wish we could have even more time to even talk about all of that. But I want to get to where you were a single parent, and divorced, and you started realizing that you needed, and in light of our today's discussion about gender roles and everything, you clearly saw the need of a man in his life. There's going to be some people probably in our audience that will say, well, what do you mean by man? So you created this, the idea of a black mitzvah. And, I looked up the term mitzvah, which, bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah. It means commandment. So tell us about the black mitzvah and what you did with your friends.
Yeah. So, well, as you know, Ray, so I'm a business owner. So I've been running a very successful business and, serving on corporate boards and being a single mom. And, it took a lot, a lot of management. And, I was his mother, his therapist, his nurse, his advocate, all of that. And then, but as he was approaching, he's turned 13 or 12 or 13. And I was being asked questions that I couldn't answer. And starting to feel like, he's had all of this mothering, but where is the influence that he needs? And with the direction of a male perspective, the tools and resources as a young man that he needs for his own self-identity.
And specifically a black young man.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so when he turned 13, I realized I could no longer do it alone, basically. Right. And so I looked for a solution and looked around at the village that we had created around us over the course of, our lifetime, and decided that I was going to access those resources, and identified 4 men in our lives. And it just turned out to be 4, wasn't a plan for 4, but the critical values that we talked about that were important were that these had to be men that we trusted, that I could trust that could take care of my son, and I could leave him with them and be totally confident that he'd be, safe and sound and well taken care of, that we admired, that had attributes that would be beneficial for a young man to have infused into his own life, and that we respected. And so they turned out to be, one was my brother, the other 3 men, one's a philanthropist, one is a business owner, self-made millionaire, and another one is a financial wealth planner. And then, so between the 4 of them, all of them had expertise and kindness as part of their MO. That and they, when I, the hardest part was the ask. I thought it was a big ask to go to those men and say, look, will you and engage in my son's life and commit to being there for him whenever he needs, and spending one-on-one time with each one of them. And they live all over the country. And it was amazing. Not only did they step in, they thanked me and told me how honored they were to be asked to do that. And one of them even cried a little that I thought that much of him, that to ask him to do that. And it was interesting because besides the 4, over time, when other men learned of the circle of kings, as I call them, either got offended that I didn't ask them, or just asked to be invited to join the circle. So it's actually broadened. And so now there's 6 or 7 men who have just been there for him in a really powerful way. And I don't know that in retrospect, I don't even know if I could have done it without them, because they have been so phenomenally gracious and being there for all their wisdom and counsel and helping step in for the hard parts.
So he has these 4 uncles, and you decide to create this black mitzvah. He turns 13 years old. We're going to get to how, Max deals with people, because I thought it was a beautiful part of the book. He wanted to play sports, and you said his best sport was having communication with people. And we're going to talk about the incident on the airplane. But tell us exactly, where did you get the inspiration for Black Mitzvah from?
Well, interestingly, Ray, it was from someone you introduced me to 1,000 years ago. A woman. She's an actress, and I don't remember what. Maybe Shaft, or anyway, she played a role, and had, you know what I'm talking about. She had given me. We had a conversation. It was only one conversation we had, and she was.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's Sheila. She, at the time, her son was a little bit older, but she mentioned to me that she had given her son a black mitzvah. That's actually where I first heard it from. Okay. And I thought that was fat, and I just, it was one of those things that I just, put on the shelf, and I went, oh, that's interesting. So when Max turned 13, I pulled that off the shelf. Now, of course, I had never been to a bar mitzvah, and so what I did was come to understand what the bar mitzvah represents. And the basic tenets are faith, community, and accountability. And I thought that was beautiful. And the word mitzvah means, as you said, good deed. And so I just thought, that was so appropriate. So we just created an event, a celebration, a rite of passage, if you will. And it was over the course of a weekend where they all joined the celebration, and we created bonding activities for the weekend where there was a real men cook, where each one of them taught him their favorite. You know how guys have some favorite thing that they do real well, right? So my son learned how to make the best guacamole in the world, and it's that kind of stuff. And then they had
I can actually bake bread, but keep going.
All right. Now you got to bake me some bread now. You making claims.
Right.
But and then we had of course there had to be video gaming. There's that challenge. But there was also the golf. So where we had the event, there was a golf course, and so they golfed. My son was the caddy, and then there was.
He didn't like golfing that much.
Huh?
Didn't you say that in the book that he didn't like the golf?
No, he didn't like it at all. But that wasn't the point, right? So he went out to be the caddy, so that just to learn the role of okay, you the rookie, and you that kind of thing, and he wound up having enjoying that. I don't think he's never picked up a golf club, right. And then they did a boating trip. So the goal was to just have these opportunities where the men, it was just the men. They went and did these things, and that was kind of the initiation of what was to come in terms of understanding. And that was my son's first ever just being around just men. So it was pretty awesome. And I wish I had filmed the whole thing. Because when we did it, I had no idea of the magnitude. I didn't. It wasn't until we were at the table with the cake and where for the exercise, I had my son write each one of them individually a letter sharing what he admired most about them and what he hoped to learn from them. And then each of them read their letters, and they responded with a commitment to him with these incredible gifts. And it was so moving and beautiful. And I was crying, and it was just amazing. And so I have this really incredible memory of this moment of celebration, uplifting this young man from other men who told him how much they believed in him, that they would be there for him, what they recognized in him as his gifts and abilities. It was so beautiful. And I think that was the greatest gift that they could have. It's the greatest gift he's ever gotten. And it keeps on giving because they're still there for him.
And so Max is in school. And as we know, Marianne, kids can be cruel. And he encountered several incidents that you related where he was bullied. But you had these men wrapped around him, if you please, and he could rely on them and you, of course, to kind of get him through those tough spots. I was particularly, intrigued when I'm jumping a little bit ahead chronologically, but I was, the way, talk about his prom and what happened the night of his prom. You didn't like that girl. Let's be real. The girl he was taking to the prom, but Max is, coming into puberty. And again, I'm going to go back, but he's coming into puberty. There's a prom, and prom is like, it means promenade, and he's going to be out in the world. And tell us what happened that night.
Yeah, well,
pick out the corsage for
right.
her.
Well, actually, the prom night, that wasn't the biggest thing that, the biggest story where I thought you were going to go. But all that to say, yeah, he had expectations. You know how kids talk about what prom night is supposed to be. And I remember him having a conversation with each of the mentors about how to behave and where to draw the line and how to be appropriate and managing his expectations for that evening. And as it turned out, she had invited him or said yes to go to the prom only because she really wanted to make another boy jealous. And it was Max became aware of that midway through the evening because she really wasn't paying attention to him. She was preoccupied with this other boy. So Max, who, while, that hurt a little bit, but he decided, well, I'm here, I'm gonna have a great time. And the one thing about him is he loves to dance. He loves music. So he just decided, all right, enough of you, I'm gonna have myself a good time. So he went out on the dance floor, and people still talk about it because he turned what could have been devastating for so many young people into one of well, I won't say the best nights of his life, but he turned it into a fun night. And as far as that girl, like, yeah, I can't, I knew she was bad news the day he came home.
Mother's instinct.
Yeah. I just went, oh, this is not going to go well. But he had made his choice and had made that commitment. But no, so puberty though. So, and I know you didn't ask me the question, but
no, but that's where I was going. So go ahead. I knew where you were going. Go ahead.
So you had asked me when we were talking about it before, what was one of the biggest challenges after birth? And the two things are the bullying, and the other was porn.
Yeah.
So here's how the porn started. So
I'm glad you brought this up, but go ahead.
So once every year we travel somewhere, right? It's a big trip. Like John Robert Max has been on every continent except one. So he had a fascination with Japan because he loves anime, he loves sushi, and he loves the culture. And so he chose that we go there. So I told him, I said, okay, that's terrific. Go do the research so that we can figure out where we're going to go when we get there. What are we going to do? So I leave him to his own
devices.
Right. And we go take this trip and it's wonderful and everything is fabulous. And it's not until we get back that he's at my office one day and one of my other coworkers comes running up to my office and upset. And I'm like, what's going on? Right? What? And he goes, come with me. It's a guy. And I go look at the computer and it is loaded. He has downloaded. I'm not talking about X-rated. I'm talking about like quadruple X-rated to the point where it was stuff I had never even seen before. And I'm like, oh my God. And so, I panic, I'm frantic. I'm thinking, how do I wash his head out with soap? And what was even worse was that once he started down that road, it was like, it wasn't stopping. I mean, he was totally caught up and everywhere he could get access to a computer. I remember he was volunteering at a community center, and while he waited for me, found somebody's office. They said, "Oh, go sit in here and wait for your mom." There was a computer in there. And so when I get there, it's like poured all over the computer. I'm like, "Oh my God, this is an issue." So I'm fit to be tied. You could peel me off the ceiling. I don't know what to do. I'm frantic. I've done everything I possibly can to try to, talk to him about it. So I went to the mentors and I said, look, guys, I need y'all. Y'all got to step in, help me deal with this. What do I do? And when I'm imploring this, I'm like, oh my, this is an issue. And the first thing that happens is the four of them, each one of them individually, say this to me. They go, oh, calm down. This is normal. And that alone, Ray, I can't begin to tell you, that was transformational for me, because I was panic stricken thinking I've lost my boy. I have to have him exorcised. You know what I mean? I just didn't know what to do. And they all just made me relax and get a grip. And then each one of them had conversations with him, not to say, to say what needed to be said, that you're normal. It's healthy to be this way. However, let's just, understand that one, it's important that you respect women. Two, don't let it interfere with your studies and things you have to do. And for God's sake, don't let your mama know. And so,
see, this is one of the things I love about the book, because a lot of times you read books about, disabled children, disabled adults, and they only show the kind of the sunny side and the good side. So it's almost like a heroic narrative or something like that. And this is a heroic narrative, but it also shows how he became a hero and stuff. So I really enjoyed that. Can you share? Yeah, you overcame that, and and he did as well. Anyway, you say that kids can be cruel, and that a lot of his peers in middle school as well as high school would ask him, is he black? Would ask, because he was lighter skinned, and they were saying, well, you must be Italian or something like that. So he comes home one day and asks you, Mom, am I black? Tell us about what happened when he asked you that.
Well, besides this look that I just gave you, because I'm looking at him like, we and you know me, so we live in the most blackety black, household. It's all black art everywhere. If you look at my library, it's just filled with all these black books. Not all of his children's books, but Martin Luther King Day. I mean, so we are truly, I thought, bringing him up to really understand and be proud of his identity as a black boy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the lesson that I learned from him asking me that question is that it is amazing the outside influences, because one, he kept being asked, is he mixed, or black, you're Puerto Rican or whatever else. So they were denying his blackness. The other thing was, because my son has had a different life experience. As I said, he's traveled the world. He's well educated. He speaks like I speak, and his behavior and his conversations are, very complex, because he's had many experiences. And his interpretation of Blackness, because of the way the media, presents us, is that if you're not like with your pants hanging down, or, a, slang talking, hip hop, gold, all of those images, which are not him. So he, and that being brought to his attention, even by other young Black men, going, "Oh, you're not one of us, or you different." And so he questioned his own Blackness, and that was so painful to hear that, because I knew that we had work to do on him owning just who he is, and also preparing him for not being bought into how other people might perceive him, or their expectations of him. That, the sense of pride in just being who you are, and most important, understanding that there are a lot of people who do see your Blackness, and that power can go against you. And what's not in the book, which has happened since, is, being pulled over, by the police, and then having his civil rights violated because he's, in the car with another young man who looks like he's actually from Afghanistan, but looks like he's Mexican. So the car, and they get pulled over, and wind up, my son is in the passenger seat, but for some reason the police need to see his driver's license and run a check on him too. So, so those kind of experiences he's going to have, and I needed to make sure that he understood that, it's complicated, and he's going to have to know how to navigate this world as a Black man, and be proud of who he is. So that was, and his mentors were also, engaged in their own experiences, and to help him understand what that journey might look like. And, so now today he's a very proud Black man, but it's interesting because it also is the inspiration for he's a creative, he's a storyteller. And so his stories are about, addressing this issue. He's working for diversity in his stories, and telling better stories that address humanity and how we really need to treat one another, and allow people to be themselves.
Yeah, I want to talk about the biggest challenge. I always feel that the biggest challenge of raising a Black boy in this society is getting them to have a deep understanding of what white supremacy is and how it works in a variety of ways, because oftentimes it's disguised. I've got a friend of mine, and he says the only thing that white people organize for is racism. So we see in the middle of a forced migration out of Ukraine right now, people pausing and organizing to make sure that the Black Ukrainians and Africans don't get out. So what do you consider? I mean, I think that that's the biggest challenge, is really having young Black males understand how they are going to encounter things, but how the system of white supremacy works. What do you think the most difficult challenge is for raising a Black boy?
Well, when you look at the hierarchy of, people in terms of opportunity, or of, celebration, Black men are at the bottom. It's Black men, I think, are the brunt of the worst abuse, the worst discrimination, the lowest expectations, and therefore have the least amount of, I think, sense of self-worth and dignity. And so the biggest challenge is, I think, is on us as a community to make sure that we focus on Black Boy Joy. You know, I'm so glad they wrote that book on celebrating what young Black men contribution to our community, the important role that they have in terms of, you know, becoming young men to take care of their families, becoming the kind of young men who can, you know, be a force within their community to protect, to serve, to be a global citizen. And I think that we need to, as families and as communities, really work hard to make sure that we are, you know, imbuing these, you know, values that help them develop this sense of value, of self-worth, of confidence. And the role, so the role of the four mentors, what they have been able to do is be there for him at his weakest moments when he had these questions, to step in and catch him and infuse in him a sense of pride. You know, my brother, who's a Kappa, he's a Kappa man.
Right.
And so in one of those moments, my brother leaned in, showed him his brand, you know, the warrior brand. And my son was like, wow, what is that? How cool is that? And then my brother was able to, you know, recite for him the Kappa, you know, mantra,
Right.
and then talk to him about what that means, this bond between men, and what you know, what it means to stand up for yourself and be a man, and the brotherhood. And brotherhood is an important concept that Black men need to stand together. You know, we're all in this together. If we support one another, this is what I've learned from, you know, the brethren about, you know, having each other's back, and, you know, and raising the level of expectation for excellence, and challenging my son to step up and, you know, be righteous and be responsible and be respectful. And that's what really has been, you know, such a strong foundation in the man that Max is today, that has empowered him to, I think, be a hero, because he is really, you know, all of that, and not just for himself, but for others, because he's very quick now to lean in and be that. He's a big brother to himself, to other young men, you know, totally understands that responsibility.
It's really amazing how Black men, you know, are revered at so many levels. The NBA, singing, you know, it's all sports and stuff like that, even acting. But at the same time, you have like young Black boys like Elijah McClain, out in Colorado, the one that was walking home from violin lessons and was killed, you know, for doing absolutely nothing. I mean, there's so much, a long list of that. And it's something that I think is very important. I mean, I've got two sons myself, and now I got two grandsons, you know, and you got to instill in them, as you did, as early as possible, what that means to be a Black, you know, boy and a Black man, and what the society will do that will oftentimes just throw them into these roles that they see on TV, that they hear in certain music, that will make them turn in directions that will have them being denigrated and stuff like that. Always right on the board when I'm teaching young Black men, I'll say, how many of you think you will be struck by lightning? And they'll say, no, of course not, you know, and it's actually 1 in 10,000 people are. I said, well, how many of you would like to get into the NBA and play basketball? And several boys will raise their hands. And I said, well, the odds of that happening is 1 in 52,000. And then they say, you mean I have a better chance, you know, Dr. Winbush, of getting struck by lightning than, you know, getting in the NBA? I said, exactly. You know, and I said, so, and then they'll start realizing that stuff. I guess we're right at the time of. By the way, tell us about what Max is doing today. He's how old now? 27?
27.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
is he doing now?
Well, first I want to go back to and talk a little bit about, expectations of young Black men and how they think, see the superstars and see that. So, you said something earlier about, and this is the role that mentors played in helping Max understand what his gift is or what his unique talent is. And so they have this, like boys weekend where all the men in the family and the nephews and all of them hang out, just the guys, just the fellas. And so my brother has a pool. So in the backyard, they're all, acting a fool, acting crazy. And my son, because he has cerebral palsy, he's just kind of sitting on the side. But he's not going to be left out. He's very social. So he's, talking, all kind of, nonsense and telling lies and, acting a fool and trying to, telling people what to do. And my brother's observation after watching how my son interacts in situations says to him, he goes, you may not be a sports athlete. He goes, you're a social athlete.
Right.
And that was just an incredible, powerful thing to say, because for him, especially my brother, who is an athlete, he's a basketball player and, the man's man. And, suddenly for him, that was a way that he knew that he could coach him on, because just like any athlete, you need coaching and training to coach him into being the social king that he is today. So he's very comfortable in any situation and can talk to anybody. And that's his unique gift. And as a creator, he's a storyteller. And so what he's doing now is producing his own stories in animation, in the art form of anime. And he's got 2 projects, and he has his own book for the audience. It's called, let me see, The Art World of Max Zolo, which is a book of his art. And the narrative is where he talks about art as his therapy and as his coping mechanism for how he has gotten through life facing issues like anxiety, bullying. And the bullying is one of the biggest issues because he's also in therapy. He was bullied so badly, the middle school kids referring to him as a Crip, girls making him the butt of jokes about, oh, you like Max, and making fun of him. And it was damaging to his self-esteem, critically damaging, to the point where, and I talk about this in the book, he attempted suicide. And so it got to the point where I just, we knew that, and he's told me, he came to me and said, Mom, I need therapy. And that was powerful. We immediately made that happen. He's been in therapy ever since. It's been extremely helpful. It has saved his life. But bullying, especially of people with disabilities, is brutal. And that's something that we all really need to work on. And if you see it, stop it. We can't stand for it. That has to change. Because I've seen it and experienced it personally, the way that I have with my son, to watch him just become crippled by it. That is the other, most significant challenge with raising my son. And, he's fine. He's much better now, but that took years. I mean, there were many days.
I can imagine. And I think with the internet and social media, I asked my students at Morgan State, they say it's easier. We were bullied, throughout history, but it has gone to light speed now because of social media. And we've heard about people attempting suicide and being successful because of social media. I tell parents to keep an eye on that stuff, monitor your kids and what they're hearing. Let's take some questions. I want to say this is Whoops. This is Marianne's book, Rising. You got to read it. It's just a powerful book. And then you want to pass it on to others for them to read as well. So why don't we take some questions now from the audience and see what people have to ask you. I don't know how to do this. Our host will probably tell us what to do.
Well, I see a comment from Funlio, who
I don't see any comments.
we just met last week, and she says that her son was in NICU for 90 days.
Wow.
Yeah, so my heart goes out to you, sister girlfriend, because we need to, we can talk offline and talk about that journey, because when every single day that you go in to see your child in that little NICU, you just go in there with your heart in your throat, because you never know what the doctors are going to say. I never knew what to expect. Every day you go in and you get a full report on what's going on. And like I said, there were little, we had to do little mini interventions along the way. And those first few days, you just don't know. You don't know what to expect. You have to be ready for anything.
It was such a tender moment when you talk about the first time you were able to hold Max. I mean, I had tears in my eyes. I read that. I'll confess, because it was just beautiful, because you could feel in your words how long you had waited for that moment. So it was just beautiful. I wanted to say that.
Well, thank you.
Let's see. Somebody is praising you. Janice Adams says, I'm lifted every time I hear Marianne Howland speak about her son and her book about their journey. It's a beautiful book. Thank you, Janice, for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janice.
So is Max in Nashville now?
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
Well, he is just before COVID.
Yeah.
All making all these plans for, him moving into his own apartment with his best friend. And, he was all excited about finally launching, because he needed a little extra time to really feel comfortable and confident that he can actually do this on his own, because, he's got, it's a bit more complicated for him.
Right.
And he's the type of person that would always need, he's not independent enough that, he would need to live with somebody just to kind of have someone to make sure that everything was cool. And so he found that in this really excellent, individual who's his best friend. But then COVID hit. So he's still living at home with me. And now we're just beginning to renew the conversation for him to move out on his own. And I'm really excited about that. And, the biggest joy in my life now, and I tell him this all the time, because he's, Mom, when I go, you're going to miss me. And I'm like, yeah, but you know what? I will be happier. It will be bigger to see you launch and do your thing. Would mean more for me than anything to know that you're on your way and are, about to start your own life as a man. So that's the goal.
Exactly. How has his love life? I know that was a major part of it. How was his love life?
Well, and it's really interesting, because when he was since he was a little kid, like 5, 6 years old, he has always talked about being a daddy. Like family and being a father has been a life goal for him. Unfortunately, because he's a Black male with a disability, that's just not been easy. And so while he's very handsome, and when you see him, he's very attractive, he can attract women, but as soon as he walks, because how you'll notice his disability most is when he walks, because he's mobile, but he walks with what I call his pimp. But it's different. And so that has been, and I'll tell you, Ray, I really think it's more him, the way he looks at himself,
rather than others. Yeah.
Because if he were more confident and had the self-esteem that was stripped away because of the bullying, I don't think it would be in the way. his barrier is that he doesn't think of himself as being attractive to women. He doesn't believe in himself. And I think that when you wear that, I think that that is the impasse for him. So we're working very hard to just get him to the place where he got swagger.
Right, right.
Listen, because he's fly. He got the, he can, when he cleans up, he's actually been on a runway. He's model material. He's gorgeous,
Yeah.
but he doesn't. You got to own that inside. So that's the journey.
Yeah, I've had several, men and women in therapy, as a psychologist who have been bullied, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And the impact on them is still devastating. We hear a lot about bullying now, but I think we really need to take it seriously, and do something about it. Listen to the children who are being literally persecuted in schools and in other venues, and do something about it, because it can have long-term effects.
Very long term. And we tend to look at ourselves through other people's eyes, right? We kind of assess our self-worth based on people's opinions and perceptions of us and how people look at us. And so when his life experiences, he's walking through an airport and a child will, innocently go, "Why do you walk like that?" And then the parent is the one who's the problem. He'll go, "Shh," and look away. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden make him feel weird when that's a natural question. And what the better thing to do is allow my son to just say, "Yeah, I've got cerebral palsy." You know what I mean? And just explain it and educate a public rather than to avert their eyes. So it starts with adults to begin to teach children that people come in different bodies.
That's right.
Everybody's different. And there are a lot of unseen disabilities. Well, here's an example. If I speak on this to audiences often about the world living with disabilities, and I'll ask the question to an audience, how many people, if they took off their glasses or their contact lenses, would they be able to see me on stage? And half the people in the audience admit. And I said, well, there you go. That's a disability. The only difference is technology gave you glasses and became a fashion industry, so you're cool and you fit in. I said, well, imagine if we just remove barriers and create technologies that enable people to participate fully as individuals, then that's where we need to be going, and stop instead dismissing, making people invisible, and minimizing what someone's accomplishments and achievements might be just because they look different. My son, as I said, my son's brilliant, and I live in a world of people with disabilities. So I have a big community of incredible people who have incredible gifts that just get marginalized only because society is the disabler.
Yeah. And it's interesting now that we take for granted, some of the, because of the Disabilities Act that was passed during the Ford administration, that we take for granted some of the things that we have at, restrooms and ramps and all of these things like that. But it's hard to imagine, I'm not going to tell you my age, but it's hard to imagine that, thousands of years ago, none of those things existed. We didn't care about those who couldn't walk upstairs or people who were in wheelchairs. And now the society at least tries to care a little bit more about those folks.
Well, and truth be told, Ray, every one of us that's participating, listening in on this thing, are eventually going to become part of that segment of the population of people with disabilities because of the aging process. So we really need to care about it, right? Because we all gonna get there. So, I remember when my brother, who's still relatively young, he's 6'5", Mandinka of a man, played basketball. Is like, well, suddenly at age like 40, he needed a knee replacement, right?
That's right.
But he still think he cute, right? So, he's still wanting to like roll. So we need to do better about being able to, attend and pay attention and live in service and in kindness and in openness around people who are just different. And I really think that it's just people with different bodies. Everybody has something to offer. And I wish we could adopt that attitude and teach our kids better, because as you were, as you open this question up, bullying is killing people. So
It's one of the most, I mean, it's one of those things that about maybe 5, 6 years ago, I kind of underestimated its impact on adulthood. And then, all of us were bullied. I know I was at one time, and, you hear all these things, fight back. And, I did that, but it was still bullying, and again, every time I go to speak now, this is a major topic among the children. They want to know how to deal with it. So really, we got to pay more attention to it. I think I'm going to do something more about this on a very formal level. That might be my next book or something. But it's very important.
We'll write it together, because and my son would be one of the first people to sit down with to talk about it, because he can, and from the standpoint, and he'll say to you, the worst part of bullying was the girls.
Yeah.
Because, for a young man, especially you talked about puberty in that age when, you see all the little, you're at school and they're all hugged up in corners and sneaking kisses and drawing little hearts. And suddenly, and you're not a part of that. And instead you're being made fun of, and the girls are making jokes about you. That damage, that's really, because my son, he's a little bit of a badass. He's the kind of guy, he's a fighter. So if you challenge him, even with his, his little, body,
right.
He's in there, come on, you know what I mean? And the men had to talk to him about, look, don't be challenged, let's use other tools, because we want to see you hurt. But that's his attitude. But the girls, he would just go limp, because, what do you do about that?
Yeah, it can be done. Well, we've got about 2 or 3 minutes left. Any closing remarks you would like everyone to know? What's your next project that all of us would be interested in?
Oh, okay. Well, there are two. One is the Black Mitzvah. That concept has been embraced by lots of people. Whenever I talk about it, I get a lot of response around, oh my God, that's incredible. People want to do that for their son, and it could be for girls, because our daughters need it too. They need their own circle of queens.
That's right.
So I would like to make Black Mitzvah a movement. So I've got a few people teed up who are planning to create this rite of passage, this celebration for their own 13-year-olds. And it doesn't have to be 13. It really, anywhere in the teenage years, when you can provide any young person with that kind of foundation where they are uplifted, you wrap community around them and let them know that they're supported in whatever they do, and that's for life. That's a gift that just is, keeps on giving. So there's that. So my next project is to try to encourage that and be a part of that as much as possible. And the other project that I've been working on is a fashion line for people with disabilities. One of the things that has come up for this journey with my son is because of his cerebral palsy, I remember when he was invited to be in a wedding, and I took him to go get his tux and his Brooke Brothers suit, and the tailor could not get his pants to sit like they're supposed to on the top of his shoes, like how you're supposed to wear them.
Right.
Because of the way he stands. So I've had met up with some people who are who specialize in human design technology, who have created a fashion line for people with different bodies, for amputees, for seated mobility, for cerebral palsy, for Down syndrome. And as they describe it, it's not clothes and it's not adaptive clothing, it's fashion. So these clothes are beautiful. And so my son was a model at the LA fashion show on the runway featuring one of our designs. So this 2022, we're launching that.
And I got a name for your company, Max and Mom. Max and Mom. Think about that. Look, Marianne, thank you for this time together. And please read her book. It's a page turner. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll be talking to each other soon, Marianne. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ray. This has been wonderful. And thanks to all the people who joined in. I just want to give a shout out to Susan Johnson, our friend Susan Johnson, Ray. I saw her come up on the screen. She was she said hello.
Okay.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. That was a very illuminating discussion. Please head over to Eventbrite to purchase your copy of Warrior Rising. It is such an important conversation to be having. I think we can all learn so much from it. Yeah, so just again, thank you for coming and for joining us. You guys have a good evening.
Take care.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thanks to Busboys and Poets. Really appreciate you.
Of course. It was great to have you.
All right. Okay.
All right, guys. Thank you for joining us. Please stay warm, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye.